Alright, fellas, I have to explain what DCNH is, and all I get is just this one slide. Alright, so let's start. This is gonna be a very simple tutorial, as simple as it gets. And yeah, pretty much, right? So let's go. So first of all, the first thing you want to notice about DCNH is that it's a 4-element system, as you can see here. That's one, that's two, that's three, that's four. Fantastic, incredible, awesome. Now, next thing you want to know is that it's a 4-slot system, meaning that each one of these positions means. So this is called, this is position 1, S1, then S2, then S3, and then S4. It's a horrible 3. I don't know how I managed to draw that. But each position means something differently. And, the simplest idea is you can start thinking, this is not 100% accurate, but you can start thinking this is 100%, full boost thingy. And this boy is a goofball with 0% who can't do shit, right? So this type, for example, would be able to do whatever D is pretty nicely, but then H would be absolutely horrendous, right? So that's kind of where you want to start at, right? Okay, so now you know the basics of the system essentially. And another rule is, just in case you were wondering, anything can go anywhere. So any possible combination is possible, right? There is no rules about, oh, you need to have D. If you have D, you can't have C3 or something like that. No, DCNH is possible, DCHN is possible, DNCH is possible, DNHC is all of them, right? There's 24 things that are possible out of DCNH, right? In a 4-slot. That's just how permutations, no combinatorics work. All right, fantastic, right? So things got a little complicated there, but don't worry. All right, so next thing I would say is learning what these things mean. So what does dominant mean? Dominant means implementing, putting in the work. So let's actually write that in, because why not, right? So dominant is always going to be about implementing. That's dominant for you. Let's shove that away right there. Boom, fantastic, incredible. This is annoying, so let's lock it away. All right, next let's bring another one of them fellas. Now the next thing, creative. Oopsie doopsie, look at that. Creative is creatively placed. Creative is going to be about initiating, right? So starting. Oh, it's not how you write initiating? R-I-P. R-I-P. There is no initiating? What? Anyway, so creative is about starting things, right? So like think of it as a chain. First, someone is going to have to start that chain with creative, and then someone is going to have to implement the things, right? Someone comes up with the idea, and then someone has to put those ideas into the real world. Fantastic. What happens afterwards? Well, the natural, final step would be, okay, someone has started it, someone has implemented it, right? Someone has to judge it, right? And that judger, that finalizer, usually called finalizer, you can call them correctors though. Because I've seen some people ask the question to type people, oh, do you finalize things? Which is not exactly how you judge for normalizing. Normalizing people don't have to always necessarily finish things, but they always do things as accurately as possible, right? And that's the normalizing role, is just making sure the work that has been done by these two clowns is appropriate before it's published, it's out there in the world. But however, to keep all of these fellas together, we need one final element, which is going to be harmonizing. And harmonizing is just called the stabilizing element, right? It just keeps everyone together. Those are all the elements essentially, right? And everyone has these things, just depends in what order, right? Like could be in this order, for example. Right? This is DCHN, right? Fantastic. Now, you could kind of start typing people based on over DCNH exactly like that, right? You could be like, oh, this person is extremely hard work in 1D. They're fairly harmonious, let's say 2H. Their creativity is up there, but their normalizing is slightly worse. And just like that, you could start typing people. Or this person harmonizes a lot, right? And then, they're also creative, and there's some normalizing. Dominant is not so much, right? And you could start playing around with this, and perfectly type, and that would be perfectly fine. Kind of, almost. But the one thing we are forgetting about is there are positions, right? So there's the second position, third position, fourth position, right? So what we know already kind of is there's a limit, is there a competency, right, to them, right? First very, fourth not so much. And that is true, but there is more. So there's 4 versions of all of the elements essentially. So let's kind of make clusters of them like this. Here's one cluster, then here's another cluster, then here's another cluster, and then here's another cluster. Look at this beauty. Those clusters are based on whether they're a hero position, 1, a parent position, 2, a child position, 3, or a teen position, 4. And all these names already tell you quite a bit about how and what difference they make depending on the position they are. So let me go pull up a graph actually. So you're about to see some horrifying things in here. Gmail, Jaw Titan, Trump sings Many Men, and my modeling page. But there's Discord. Alright, so here's Discord. We can go to the snippets. Just like this, snippets. And then somewhere there's a course, Crash Course DCNH. And we can read those. Fantastic. Now, the first position is gonna be commanding. It's gonna be responsible. It's gonna be monologue, bold, and arrogant. The most important thing here out of all of these is gonna be monologue. And let's go back. So there's the opposite of it. It would be dialogue, right? So let's kind of talk a little bit more about monologue versus dialogue, right? So monologue is going to be the person's own responsibility. No one else is allowed to engage in that. It's just his thing. That's his own responsibility. No one gets involved in that, right? So it's a you responsibility. And that applies to the first and fourth position. Then there's dialogue, which applies to the second and third position. Now, dialogue, however, will be to common responsibilities. Responsibilities that the person believes are shared. That should not be just one person's thing. That other people's help is beneficial in those realms. And that would be dialogue. And now of each element, there's a monologue version and there's a dialogue version. So if we go back here, all of these would be monologue, and all of these would also be monologue, right? And then the ones below will be dialogue. So there is a monologue version and dialogue version of all. So let's kind of talk about them. If we go here, all right. So monologue normalizing will be like the responsibility of getting to the answers and to the correct answers and being right falls on the person themselves alone, right? Everyone else is a bit of an idiot. Everyone else is, well, just not, cannot really contribute to that. You believe that the answers have to come from you and you solely, right? Harmonizing first believes that it's their responsibility to bring stability and harmony, maybe order in some capacity to the group on their own and keep everyone sailing along on their own. Not like the traditional harmonizing where you get 2 people to talk to each other. No, no, no. They will make them work on their own. Now, creative monologue is you have to forge your own path, and they have to be your own ideas and your own way and your own motivation and your own initiation to be able to go anywhere. You don't just follow in other people's path, or you don't really share their ideas or something like that. That would be what monologue creative is like. Now, monologue dominant is again, right? You have to do the work on your own. You have to be the one to do the implementation. No one else comes in and holds your hands and does it together. No, no, you have to do the work on your own. Now, that is true for both 1 and 4. The difference is competency, right? And frequency. So the 1 positions will be doing this a lot, and they will be competent at it. They have the right to do that. The 4th, not so much, however, because the 4th doesn't really do it. And the 4th is in a bit of a funny position because they want to be like this hero, but they're more of an arrogant brat, which doesn't want to allow anyone else to help them. But at the same time, they won't do it themselves. It's like, hey, mom, you don't help me to clean my room. I'll clean it my own, but I'll never clean it. And that's kind of the awkward position that the 4th position happens to be in, right? It's like, oh, I have to do it on my own, but I don't want to do it. In any case, no one else will do it for me. That's the interesting position that the fourth finds itself. But now if we move on to the dialogue ones, which are much more interesting in that fashion, there are things that you believe are ought to be shared with other people that working together on makes sense. So dialogue normalizing would be like, let's think this through. What do you have to say about it? What do you have to say about it? Do you think this makes sense? Do you think that makes sense? Well, I think that makes sense, right? No one just comes in and is the almighty expert on it and knows all the answers. No, no, everything has to be discussed. Everything has to be, go through the process, and we'll talk it out and see what makes sense together. With harmonizing second, let's bring the people together, let's mediate between them, and let's help them come to just harmonizing in general dynamic, and let's help them come to the conclusions. With create second with creative dynamic, let's share ideas, let's share motivation, let's work on creating these paths together, and let's kind of bring that out from everyone. With dynamic dominant, let's work together, let's implement this together, you do this, together we do that, together our strengths are like that, let's put in that work together. That is true for both the second position and the third position. The difference is once again in capacity and frequency. The second position will be going out of its way to ensure that everyone else is participating in its dynamic process. The third one, however, is more of a lackey. It's more of, okay guys, I want to be in the team, but you do most of the heavy lifting for me. Yeah. And once we get later into things, there's something called aspirations. So the third aspires to be like one. And so the third is like, I want to be one day able to do all what a one position would be able to do. But it's currently at the third, right? Fourth aspires to be two and all that. And so the third is also in a unique position where it wants to be this like hero, but it realizes that it's a baby and it can't do much. And so while it's not doesn't have the arrogance of a teenager, the brattiness of a teenager, it doesn't have the ability of a parent or a hero, even though it wants to be like a hero. So, it requires kind of like either the hero to do all for it, and it will love that, just for the hero to come save it. But to grow, it requires the parent to be there to parent it, to ensure that, you're still putting in the hours. I'm not sure how I feel about child labor in this baby metaphor, but, life goes on. So the second position is going to be this parent who's caring, who's responsible over everyone else. While the third is more of this toddler who's around there, right? And if we go back here to the snippets, we can kind of see this here. Second position is leading, responsible, dialogue, cautious, and secure. And if you're wondering what cautious and bold mean, it's how loud those positions will be. Will you be more introverted with these positions? Will you be more low-key with these positions? Or are you going to be loud? So a hero and a child both are loud in their own ways. A child is crying all the time, is annoying. A hero is like, hey, look at me, I'm a hero. But the parent and the teenager are a little bit more off-key. They're a little bit more low-key, I mean. So you're not going to see them be as out there as the other positions. Now this also tells you something. Arrogant, secure, insecure, and unbothered are also relevant. As you can see, right? Three, child following, irresponsible, dialogue, bold, insecure. And fourth, teenager is resisting, irresponsible, monologue, cautious, and unbothered. You kind of read more about how these things play out from here. So one day it would be like a workaholic. As always, I will do all the work on my own, while harmonizing is more of a leader, more of a cult leader, if anything. As I have before, I will bring it all together. With 1C, you have more of a hyperactive person, 20 projects that I started, 40 more to go. With 1 normalizing, it's more of a know-it-all. I am cursed to be the only competent person here. Now, to the second position, we're going to see the more parental role. 2D dominant manager. The work must be done without you, it cannot. 2H harmonizing peacemaker or mediator. Don't tear each other apart, we can talk it out. And then 2C creative motivator. Let's go guys, I believe in you, we can do it. And then 2N normalizing philosopher. You think of them as an intellectual leader. You will all be competent, I'll make sure of it, let's talk. Now if we go to the third role, dominant 3D, it's more of an offloader. Let's talk about how you will do the work. With 3H harmonizing left out, please figure out how to keep each other together, guys. 3C deflated, I get my motivation from you, spare some from me, right? 3N normalizing student, yeah, I don't really know much, please help. Then if we go to the final one, the 4 positions, 4D dominant router. Yeah, sure, I'll get the real work done in 2 to 4 business month. 4H harmonizing, wanna be convener. Yeah, I'll get to the taking care of them, it'll be easy. And 4C creative lazy. Yeah, sure, I'll get started with it once I get started. And then finally, 4N normalizing Kevin from MTT. Yeah, no, don't worry, I got this all figured out. And the more you consume of this content, you'll find the link to this Discord server in the description. The more you learn about these things. And so, with the 4 positions in mind and what they kind of look like, you now have all the knowledge essential to understanding DCNH. You will need to run through this a few times, you'll need to use it a few times yourself, but now theoretically, you know what it looks like. And so let's go and write out a type description to kind of solidify this idea for you. So D, C, let's say N, and let's say H, right? Now, 1D, as we said, will do all the work on its own. No one is going to get involved, so it's going to be like a workaholic who's doing everything on their own. 2C is more of a motivator, more of a, let's get the ideation out of everyone, let's get the brainstorming out of everyone, let's get the path going out of everyone. Let's go, guys, right? Work needs to be done, let's go, right? We can push through this together, but I will do all the work on my own. So it will motivate the people around it, but it will do all the work on its own. Now, it's willing to learn from other people, however, right? With the 3N, it's willing to see what the right answers are, what other experts have to say on the position, right? On the take. And it hopes to be one day this master expert. And with 4H, it feels the responsibility on bringing people together, lies on itself, but it would rather do everything else before it gets to that, right? So most likely with this type, you're not gonna, you're not gonna have all too much harmony. It's gonna be a bit of a rotting position, right? A left out responsibility. They're gonna be responsible with these 2 things. With this one, they're gonna like leave it up to other people, and then with this one, it's just very awkward. And so yeah, you just need to apply the same logic to every single other thing, and you should be able to apply DCNH perfectly. So let's go through one more. Let's do, for example, C and HD. Like this. Or screw it. Yeah, sure, why not? So creative first, they're gonna have to start their own path. It's gonna have to be their own idea, their own motivation, their own thing. They're going to make sure everyone around them is giving the correct answers. Everyone around them is discussing things. Let's talk things out. Does this make sense? Does that not make sense? Like an intellectual leader would. In the harmony, they kind of want to do a thing, right? Because they are a part of the harmony team. But they would prefer if someone else just kept everyone together and they didn't have to worry about that. And one day they would love to be this 1H cult leader. But, they have a lot to learn. And then with 4D, they have to do the work on their own, but they're a bit of a lazy fuck, so things are gonna take a while to get done. Alright, and that should be it. That is pretty much all there is to the DCNH. And if you want to see some examples, you can once again go to the Discord, or there's a link to it also in the description. And you can go to this database. And by the way, you may not be able to find the channels, in which case go to channels and roles, browse channels, and select the channels you do want. But now back to this. We just click on the link here, and we should be given the database with all the typings. And boop, as you can see, we are here. And for example, Steve Jobs. NDHC. Now, Steve Jobs is one of the most controversial typings here. And so his DCNH could change to something like NDCH, for example. But according to this typing, Steve Jobs would be someone who is the absolute expert on topics. He does not let other people say the right answers for him. He believes that getting to the right answer is not a shared responsibility. And we can kind of see that even when he had a team where doing such a thing was necessary, what he did is instead of having meetings, instead of like discussing those things, he's like, okay, I'm gonna let you, you're gonna come to me with the right answers, and I'm gonna trust you. I'm not gonna question you. The minute I stop trusting you, you're not gonna be in my company anymore. It's a very radical approach to how a dynamic normalizing person would be like. So let's talk it out. Let's get to the right answer together. For him, is like, no, I have my right answers. You should trust me on that, and you will get your right answers, and I'm gonna trust you on that. And the minute we can't trust, you're out. So it's very interesting, right? And you're gonna see the same dynamic with monologue dominance, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna do all my work. You can do all your work, and the minute you can't do all your work, you're out. But we're not gonna hold hands together and go through it together. That's not gonna happen. However, with Steve Jobs, he's a dynamic dominant, and his dominant happens to be in the second position. So he's a work manager. So that means he's going to be ensuring everyone around him is doing the work they need to be doing. And if not, then he's going to make sure to make a problem of it because he's the carer and he's the manager in that position. Now with 3H, which is the more 3H 4C are a bit controversial with Steve Jobs, but it means that he's not going to be able to really like harmonize well. And it's going to be loud. You're going to be able to see it that, he sucks at it, right? Like a baby at it. And he needs someone else to do the harmonizing for him. And he's just going to leave that responsibility for someone else to keep everyone together. It's not going to be really his responsibility. Although he does want to work it out with others at the same time. So it's a bit of a complicated relationship there. But as for 4C, right, he's not going to let anyone else control the creative vision for him. That's what he decides. But at the same time, he's not too much of a creative himself. He's not going to be creating all too much. Which is going to create an awkward dynamic where, if someone else wanted to go and create something for him, he's not going to like allow it because he has to have his creative input on it, but he's not going to give his creative input too much either. So it's going to be a complicated position there for Steve Jobs. And what I heard of Steve Jobs is that he did not allow other people to control the creative process, which is very intriguing. Now, if we were to move on to someone else, like let's talk about who's a good pick here. Who's a good pick? Why not go for Olivia Rodrigo? Because why not? Olivia Rodrigo, sure. So Olivia Rodrigo, we're gonna see that she's starting a lot of things. And she has to have her own creative vision, her own path, and she's gonna be doing that quite a lot. Unlike like Steve Jobs, she's gonna be starting a lot of things and is going to have her way around them. She's gonna make sure that everyone around her is in a good state. Everyone around her is stable. Everyone around her, she's momming the group around, like an emotional mommy of the group, right? So that nothing goes wrong, so that the group doesn't lose cohesion and things don't go to shit. Now, in terms of work, it's going to be a complicated relationship for her because she wants to become this hard worker. But at the same time, she doesn't. And so she values teamwork and she wants other people to work with her. But she's not going to be the high outputter in that group, right? She's going to be more of a laid back person in that way where she allows other people to take the lead in the work. Now, with foreign, right? Nobody's going to tell her what's right. She's going to have to come to those answers on her own. But she's not too much of a nerd, right? She's not too concerned about what's the right and what's wrong in a technical sense. She can get to that when she needs to. Right. So with this, and I'm not gonna make a tutorial of the database. You can go and learn it on your own, one end, see, or monologue normalizing. But yeah, that should be all what you need to know about DCNH and MTT, and you should be able to type people perfectly. If you can't, or if you're unsure, just hop over to the Discord server and ask any question you want to me or any of the other theory experts out there. So yeah, peace out.